Welcome back to the Hip Hop Report. I am Rambo Hustle, and today we are going to discuss the Bad Bunny phenomenon. We did the video last year where we compared Bad Bunny to Kendrick Lamar. Surprise, surprise. For a lot of you guys that don't know Spanish or aren't familiar with Bad Bunny or aren't familiar with the cultural aspect or importance of Bad Bunny, this video is for you. When this was announced, I was shocked. Not because I don't enjoy his music, because obviously I do. Not because I didn't understand how big he was, because obviously I do. And not because I didn't value what he brings to the table, because obviously I do. But more so because if you look at the NFL's past and what their demographic is and what their fan base is and what they actually target, that didn't make any sense at all because, yeah, he doesn't speak English. I was thrilled, but also I didn't really understand how that happened. But the more I thought about it and the more the year kept carrying on, I go, I kind of get it. Now, when this announcement was made, it was after last year's Fiesta de San Sebastián, biggest street festival in Puerto Rico. It happens every year in January, and it represents music from the island from the past. Not so much reggaeton, but like more of music that was from the essence of Puerto Rico. So salsa, plena, bomba. So because it represents all these things, the release of this album, which came about a week before that festival, was chef's kiss. I mean, it was perfect. And when you went to the festival, even though Bad Bunny did not perform at the festival, even though everyone thought he was going to perform at the festival, myself included, all you heard at this festival was Bad Bunny. It was this new album that he just released because, at a point where he's at the height of his career, he's done everything already that you could possibly do. He chose to take a risk, and instead of giving you the same old thing and milking that thing and just abusing the power of creative decision making, he decided that he was going to do something that was true to his essence, true to his upbringing, true to his island and his culture. And so this album became a representation not just of him, but more so of the Puerto Rican experience, of the Puerto Rican upbringing, of the music that we grew up to, listening to, dancing to, partying to, experiencing life to, and, seeing it at that festival made me really understand how big that was going to be across the board. Not everybody felt this way. A lot of Latin people, especially in Europe and other places of the world that are not Puerto Rico. Even if you look at the credits of the album, Bad Bunny specifically says this album is for Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people. But even then, a lot of Latin people during that time were not on board with the album. They were complaining that, what is this? We want reggaeton. We want to dance. But it's like, you guys got like 4 albums full of that type of music. So me, myself, being an artist, creating music and having a long history of artistic expression, I really appreciated the album. I never questioned it. I knew exactly what it was supposed to be. And that's all you heard when we went to this festival in the streets, because a lot of these songs are not perreo. They're not reggaeton. They are just standard bomba, plena, and salsa songs. Not to mention Nueva York being one of those. Those songs ended up topping the charts. Actually, he ended up getting a salsa record to be the #1 record in the country, which has never happened before. So, ever since the release of this album has continuously broken down walls, broken down barriers, and extended his name from just an artist to a monumental, shaker of the status quo. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other issues around this topic. ICE being in all these different, states and cities or whatever. And then, American people being pissed because it's not in English, even though you guys have had English like the other 59 years of the Super Bowl. I understand the concept of why can't we understand it, but it's like you guys forgot that you're a capitalist. It's like you forgot that the NFL is a business. It's like you forgot that the United States of America is traditionally, historically, and forever been a capitalist country. And then suddenly you just can't seem to fathom how a Latin artist that's one of the biggest streaming artists, like 4 out of the last 6 years, with 50 million followers on Instagram, insane amounts of accolades, would get the nod. Like, it makes sense because it makes money. The NFL doesn't care about the audience it already has, which happens a lot in business. Like, they have the American audience, right? And ever since Jay-Z took over, he took over because what? Because there was the protest, that they had the Black Lives Matter movement, and there was all these particular movements that said the NFL is not cultured. The NFL isn't in tune with their fan base. The NFL isn't connecting with average America. They're only connecting or caring to connect with white America. And so that's why ever since the Jay-Z addition to who is booking the talent for the NFL halftime show, we've gotten Usher, Rihanna, Shakira. Bad Bunny performed that year too, by the way, for those of you guys who have selective amnesia. So there's been a extension of what the NFL represents so they can reach other audiences and grow their fan base. So the Kendrick thing made perfect sense because that's the kind of year he was having. He was the biggest artist at the time, besides maybe Bad Bunny. There's just nobody bigger. It's the confusion doesn't even make sense. I would relay that same take onto the Grammys. The Grammys have traditionally also had that same problem. They weren't connecting culturally. They were being targeted and saying, hey, you guys are just giving these away to whoever you're cool with and not really understanding what is culturally valuable and has value and actually connects with, the entire population. And that's why that changed. And I think, in the past, 5 years, the Grammys have had no viewership, where this year they probably had the most viewership they've had in years. I don't know those numbers, so don't quote me on that. But nonetheless, the point is that, at the Grammys, I think people are used to the album winning that has the most hits. And even though that's typical, I think there is a bigger play here, which means that your album doesn't have to have the most hits. It has to have the most cultural relevance. And there's no bigger or culturally more relevant album than Bad Bunny's. For those of you guys who don't know, there are way more people in the world that speak Spanish than speak English. And that's why you have this situation playing out the way it is. So, you can be mad, you can cry about it, you can type on Facebook all you want about it, but at the end of the day, Bad Bunny winning the Grammy for Album of the Year over Kendrick, no less, who is, in the hip hop world, they say, they just give him awards whenever they want. But it makes sense there. It makes sense in him being placed in the Super Bowl as the headliner for the Super Bowl halftime show. It makes sense any way you dice it. The only way it doesn't make sense if you feel slighted because he doesn't represent you, because he doesn't speak your language. But at the end of the day, if you've ever been to a Latin party, and specifically here in Indy, there's 1,000 of them. Everyone has a Latin party. Everyone wants to have a Latin party now. You know why? Because we dance. Because it's what people are enjoying themselves at. When you go to a Latin party, you're going to have a good time. And it's a community that supports. And honestly, Latin people are the only reason why even years after G-Unit clothing was out of business, people were still buying that shit at secondhand stores. I think it's relatively ignorant to act like you don't get it. And if you don't get it, don't just say, I don't get it. Do some research. Look into it. Find out why it's happening. Because look, we all have Google. We all have phones. We all have the ability to not look dumb publicly. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to check out the album. I don't expect you, if you don't know Spanish, you're not going to get the album. Even if you like the music, there's so much nuance in knowing the lingo and knowing what he's saying and knowing how these words come together that doesn't necessarily transfer in the translation. You can translate the words and you're still not really going to get the full context, because there is a cultural nuance to his music that unless you're Puerto Rican, Dominican, or at least in tune with what reggaeton is and what it's about and the lingo, you're just not going to get it. You know, for anybody leaning on the concept of, oh, he's going to wear a dress. Like, look, he wore a dress in a video that for a song that he's trying to empower women and say, hey, you don't have to dance with a guy and worry about getting groped on. You can dance by yourself. That's what that song is about. He wore a dress in Jimmy Fallon because the week before that, a trans got killed in Puerto Rico, and he wore the name on his shirt to put more light on that issue, because that's an issue that is obviously, like, during that time it was really big in Puerto Rico. That happened a few times, and it's just a big issue across the world. So, you know, for a lot of you guys that are just online, just talking crazy and just talking out your ass, I just suggest you get a little empathy. You know, the thing with ICE, it's not political. I mean, not for us. For us, it's just about humanity. We're not against immigration. We're just against you trying to dehumanize our community in search of whatever it is you're searching for. And it most definitely is not criminals, because that's not the people that we're seeing being taken. So, you know, I think at the end of the day, it's just about living and existing in the world in a way that shows that you give a fuck and that you care about people, and that you're not just mad because your population has no cultural nuance to actually lean on or be proud of. And there's things that white people can be proud of. It's just doesn't overshadow what you should be ashamed of. And you guys have to deal with that and just keep moving forward and just be nicer and have a little empathy and just act like, even if you think you're better than everyone, you shouldn't act like it. You shouldn't speak like it. And maybe one day you'll get rid of that mentality. With that being said, Rambo Hustle with the Hip Hop Report. Stay true, stay real. Super Bowl halftime show tonight. We don't give a fuck about the game, but maybe you do.
All hustle is